The most important thing today are credible sources, and we listen to Jim all the time. What is your concern on Executive Order 14067, which was just signed with Biden and company only a few months ago? What is your concern 14067?
Yeah, it has a number of parts, and the thing with executive orders, or for that matter, legislation, I can say you have to read the fine print, and you do, but you have to actually consider the hidden agendas. Like, I can read it, anyone can read it, it's a public document, but what's behind it and where they're going with it, and that's really where the urgency comes in. It's basically an order that accelerates the U.S. movement towards a central bank digital currency, so-called CBDC. These are happening all over the world. Beijing already has one. They're past the prototype stage. They kind of rolled that out during the Winter Olympics, last February. Believe it or not, the Bahamas has a digital currency. There are a few other countries that have already gone in that direction. Europe is, the European Central Bank is very far along. The U.S. and the Federal Reserve, because they print the currency, they understood the importance of it. They were watching it, but they were kind of taking their time. Like, hey, we're the biggest payment currency, biggest reserve currency in the world, which the dollar is, and we don't want to race into something if it's not thought out. And they were doing a kind of joint venture R&D program with MIT. Okay, and they got some experts there, so that seems to make sense. But all of a sudden, they accelerated it, and they said, no, we got to move fast on this, and we got to catch up. And that's what 14067 was about. But so that's kind of what you could get from reading. But what's the hidden agenda? Well, the first of all, just a little bit of background on central bank digital currencies. It's still the dollar, so a digital dollar is still a dollar, a digital Chinese yuan is still a yuan, a digital euro is still a euro. So it's not a new currency, but it is a new payment channel, and it is a new form of the currency, if you want to think of it that way, even though it's still the dollar. And it goes hand in hand with getting rid of cash. In other words, I'll spend, in a minute, we'll get into what the central bank digital currency, what the hidden agenda is behind that. But as I go through the list of really bad things that can happen, you say, well, okay, but I still got cash. I can go down to the bank and get whatever, $10,000 or $100,000 in cash. By the way, that's not easy to do. You can, it's legal, it's not illegal, but try doing it. They'll tell you to come back, make an appointment. They don't have that much money. They got to ship it in. You better show up with like your birth certificate and 5 character witnesses, and then they'll report you to the Treasury, actually the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, notice the word crime, FinCEN for short, Northern Virginia, and you'll go in a file next to, so it's not so easy to get your cash, but you can in theory, and that's the alternative. So they have to not only push the digital currency agenda, which we'll talk about in a minute, but they have to get rid of cash, because as long as you have cash, you can do an end run around this. So these two things are coming down the track pretty fast. Now, flipping back to the central bank digital currency, it's not a cryptocurrency. It's not on a blockchain. A blockchain is just a ledger. They've been around since the 80s, no big deal. But this ledger will be maintained by somebody, probably the Federal Reserve. But there could be a new government agency doing it.
Jim, a ledger that keeps track of everybody's transactions?
Well, it does two things. It does that, you're right, Kim, but it's kind of like a bank account. So we might quickly end up in a world where, I have an account at a bank, you guys have accounts at banks. Well, those banks are either members of the Federal Reserve System, or they're smaller banks that are correspondents of bigger banks that are members of the Federal Reserve System, like Bank of America. The point being, the banks kind of keep all the books. We might be in a world where you would have an account at the Fed. Kim and Robert and I and everyone listening would have an account at the Fed. We'd have it on our iPhone or our Samsung or whatever our mobile phone is. And if I send you money, the Fed takes it out of my account and sends it to your account. End of story. Kind of like a Venmo type of thing, but larger denominations, et cetera. That has implications in terms of disintermediating the banks. So if you can do that, which you can technically, who needs banks? But those are like ancillary. The Fed's main job from the beginning, from 1913, really 1907 onward, is to prop up the banks. Like, that's why they're there. So I doubt they'll disintermediate the banks. But either way, you're going to have a faster, cheaper, better system for making payments. But what else? And this is the key, and this is why we're sounding the alarm a little bit on Executive Order 14067. So once it's digital, a couple things. First of all, they know your whereabouts. Now, they already know your whereabouts from your iPhone, unless you turn your iPhone off, and not just turn it off, but put it in what's called a Faraday sac, which is a special woven fabric of a metallic weave that blocks radiation. And by the way, do the same thing with your Easy Pass and a bunch of other stuff. But unless you do that, then they know where you are through your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever. So they already know your whereabouts. We have facial recognition software. People go, I'm going to wear a mask and sunglasses and pull my hat down. Okay. They have what's called gait recognition software, GAIT, meaning how you walk. And it's like a fingerprint. So even if you're wearing a mask, they see you walking down the street. They're like, that's Kim or that's Robert or Jim or as the case may be. So they already know a lot and they know your whereabouts. But now they're going to know what you're buying. Right, because every product has a SKU, stock keeping code, stock keeping unit code, with a QR scan, digital scan. They're going to know what you're buying, and this digital currency is programmable, meaning they can block certain purchases or not. So let's say you donate money to Elise Stefanik. She's an up-and-coming Republican member of the Republican leadership at an upstate district in New York. Or if you donate money to Donald Trump, they'll know that, first of all. And you might find that your account's frozen. Or let's say they want to see right now, if you work and you're an employee, it's a technical term defined, and you get paid and you get a W-2 at the end of the year, but they withhold it from your payment. They get paid every 2 weeks or whatever. They employer withholds taxes from your wages, and then you get your W-2, file your tax return, you reconcile, maybe you get a refund, maybe you owe a little bit, but they got the money up front through withholding. But that's not true for independent contractors and professionals, so doctors, lawyers, architects, landscaping store, and anybody who's not a W-2 employee doesn't have withholding. They got to pay their taxes. But what if they could just take it out of your bank account? It's like, yeah, okay, you're a doctor, but you put the money in this bank, and I'm just going to take, some number, 20% out of your bank account every month. And yeah, we'll send you a statement, 1099, file your tax return. And, you owe or you get a refund, but no more honor system. In other words, no more waiting until year end. We're going to take it out of your bank account. Or what if, as a form of stimulus, even though it's not stimulus, but they'll call it that, but we're going to put a countdown clock on your bank account. And if you don't spend 10% of it in the next 30 days, we're going to deduct, that much. So in other words, use it or lose it. So now all of a sudden, I worked hard. I made this money. It's in the bank. But you're telling me if I don't spend it, I'm going to lose it anyway. So I might as well go spend it. And of course, the idea is to stimulate the economy. But the point is the number of things you can do, from surveillance to identifying your political preferences, withholding taxes, account freezes, account seizures, time limitations on your money. Your money's a countdown clock. It expires after a certain period of time, et cetera. I could go on and on, but you take the point, which is it's not your money anymore. I've always said to people, you put your money in the bank, it's not your money, it's the bank's money, and they'll give it to you if they feel like it. Well, this is that same idea on stilts. And this is like, and now the government's involved, and it's easier, everything easier, faster, cheaper about payments is also easier, faster, cheaper about surveillance, confiscation, account freezes, et cetera. And then people say to me, they explain that what I just said to you guys, and they say, that'll never happen. It's already happening. I mean, it's already here.